Ladies and gentlemen, Mississippi is on a roll. For as long as anyone can remember, our state has often been rated as 50th out of 50. For decades, Mississippi was always seen as being at the bottom of every table that you didn't want to be at the bottom of, and at the top of every table you didn't want to be at the top of. I have to say, this is starting to change. In 2024, Mississippi was one of the fastest growing states in America. Household incomes, household incomes are up, one of the fastest growing household incomes in America. One of my favorite statistics is that in 2023, Mississippi's per capita GDP overtook the GDP of my old country, the United Kingdom. There has been more economic growth in Mississippi in the past 5 years than in the previous 15 years combined. And I think I certainly know it's the governor's favorite statistic, fourth graders in Mississippi now read better than fourth graders in California, New York, and Michigan. Now, all of this happened not by accident, but because of policy, because of good conservative policy. A decade ago, many of you in this room will be familiar with the fight for reform of teaching to put the emphasis on phonics. In 2021, we saw significant labour market deregulation. In 2022, flat tax reform. Mississippi has consistently kept energy costs low. In 2024, Mississippi introduced school funding reform to put more money into the classroom. And then in 2025, Mississippi passed legislation to eliminate the state income tax, the first state to do so since oil-rich Alaska in 1980. These are all phenomenally important conservative public policy reforms. But I have to put it to you, ladies and gentlemen, there is one big policy that is missing from that list of achievements: parent power, school choice. We are the only state in this part of America that doesn't have meaningful school choice. We are surrounded by states, Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, even Louisiana, that have school choice. If you are in one of those states today and you write to your state government and you ask for it, you can get approximately $7,000 paid into a dedicated account for your child, which you can then take to a school of your choice, public, private, or any other type of school. That is the change we need to see in Mississippi. And I'm delighted that we are part of a coalition pushing for this change. The Mississippi Center for Public Policy is part of a very broad coalition with some wonderful partner organizations, many of whom are here today. We have EdChoice, perhaps the original American school choice campaign group. We have the James Madison Institute from Florida, I think, has sent a representative to be with us today. We have our great allies and friends at Empower Mississippi sitting on a table here today, which is lovely. We have someone who I believe works for the Foundation for Government Accountability here with us today. We have someone sitting at the back from the Pacific Legal Foundation here with us today. It is wonderful to hear from such organizations, but we're going to hear from 3 or 4 of, I think, the most effective advocates for school choice in the state of Mississippi. And I'm going to briefly introduce who they are, and then I'm going to hand it over to them. And rather like those events at Heritage, they're going to be talking while you're eating. So don't expect there to be a break while you eat. There are 6 speakers. They're going to fill up the allotted hour or so. So please don't hold back from eating while they're talking. But the first person who we'll be hearing from is the magnificent Leah Ferretti. Leah will talk about an organization that she runs that does grassroots advocacy called Mississippi Ready. And I think their story is very powerful and very moving. We will then hear from, I think, actually one of the most effective advocates for school choice in the United States, who happens to also run the local Mississippi branch of Mums for Liberty, Lindsey Beckham, who will talk to us about some of her experience. And then we will hear from Stone Clanton for an update. He's from AFP Mississippi. He'll be talking about some of the legislative progress or lack thereof of school choice in this session. And each of them will talk for about 5 minutes. We are then going to hear from our star guest, Corey DeAngelis, who I'm absolutely delighted. Corey, a big round of applause. Thank you for being here. the world is full of people who claim close proximity to the White House, and one or two who don't. But Corey genuinely has the ear of the White House. Every time I look at his Twitter feed, he's in there helping the conversation in the White House. It will be wonderful to hear from you, your perspective of what's happening across the country, what we need to do here, and where the battle lines need to be drawn. So thank you for coming. Corey will talk for about 20 minutes with lots of room for questions and answers at the end. We then have a special treat in the form of Wade Meena. Wade is then going to introduce a little project that he's involved in, talking about why it is that too many young people sometimes have left Mississippi, what we need to do to change that and make Mississippi more attractive to young people, not only Mississippians growing up in Mississippi, but people outside Mississippi, to make sure that they come and move here the way so many young people in America move to places like Austin and Nashville. What do we need to do to make Mississippi a bigger success story? And then finally, we are going to hear from two absolutely, I think, incredibly powerful advocates for change in our state, Anastasia and her sister, Samantha. But Wade will be introducing them in a moment. If I could just finish off with one final thought. We'll be thinking that we're talking about this in Mississippi. We'll be aware that perhaps some of the issues that we're talking about have got a bit of attention outside this room across the state. On everyone's table, there are 2 or 3 copies of an article that appeared in the Wall Street Journal today by Joshua Robertson, Pastor Joshua Robertson, who is a friend of Mississippi Center for Public Policy and has spoken in Jackson on this issue. And he is in the Wall Street Journal today advocating for school choice in Mississippi. So please rest assured, the conversations we're having in this room are not just being heard across the state. I think when it comes to school choice, America is watching. America is watching members of the Senate and the House. They're watching people in Mississippi, and they're watching this key argument. It is fundamentally important for the future of our state, our families, and our country. So I'm now going to hand over the microphone to a far more eloquent speaker than me. Leah, if you'd like to come forward, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. I'm an old teacher, so I like to move around a lot while I speak, so I hope you can keep up. I want to tell you my story and my why and why I'm here today. Our journey began about 10 years ago when our oldest son, Thomas, was in his second tour of kindergarten. Raise your hand if you know what that means. He needed a little extra love. He needed just one more year. But that wasn't the case. So we held him back, not really knowing what's going on. And y'all, I'm a teacher. And if you know anything about education, teachers' hands are tied. There's a lot of things that they cannot share with parents. But because I was a teacher and I was happened to be friends with his kindergarten teacher, she pulled me to the side and said, Leah, don't you dare tell anyone I told you this, but I think your child has a learning disability. You might want to go get him evaluated. Ooh, man, that took the wind out of my sails. So I went to my husband and I'm like, all right, honey, we got to take 2 days off work, about $2,000 out of pocket, because if you're familiar with learning disability testing, insurance doesn't cover it. So we did all that. We went to Hattiesburg, to the Hattiesburg Clinic, and they sat us down and said, Mr. and Mrs. Ferretti, your child has dyslexia. And because of his dyslexia, he has speech articulation, severe anxiety. Well, I knew that one because that baby didn't want to go to school. His stomach hurt every day. He cried. He didn't want to go to that place. But I knew he was in a good spot. He was in a good, traditional public school, an A-rated public school. But they weren't meeting him where he was. They were not meeting his needs. So we took that diagnosis to our principal, and I thought, hey, I just take it, turn it in. They're going to service my baby. Oh, no. A special education teacher had not ever blackened the doors of that school since its commencement. But as an educator, I knew how to navigate the space, and I knew that wasn't right. They were denying my child his right to a free and appropriate education. So we fought tooth and nail, had to hire an attorney for them to identify his dyslexia, because I knew if they didn't say the word, they didn't have to service him. So we got a special education teacher in the school, and that wasn't enough. He still needed an Orton-Gillingham-based dyslexia therapy. So I went to my husband, And I said, hey, honey, those are dangerous words when a wife goes to her husband and says, hey, honey, what do you think about selling our house, uprooting our family, moving our businesses to send Thomas to a school in Petal, Mississippi? He's like, that is an asinine idea. Go back to the drawing board. Because how many families can uproot? How many families can move? That's not reality. So as any good mama bear would do, I went back to the drawing board, found something else out, went back to my husband and I said, hey, honey, he's like, this cannot be good. You've already come to me one time. Hey, honey, what do you think about me going back to school? I found out that Mississippi College offered a master's degree in dyslexia therapy, and I was a teacher. My undergrad is in education. And what do you think about that? He's like, that's a terrible idea, too. But if that is the lesser of the two evils, I guess we're getting a student loan and you're going back to school. So I didn't have a choice but to go back to school to be able to help my child because we were in an area of the state that didn't have a dyslexia therapist in the entire region. The entire region. So I was servicing my child, but still knew that he needed something more. He needed a smaller classroom size. He needed to do therapy during the day. Raise your hand if you've ever done spelling words with a 6-year-old. It's easier to nail Jello, not Nello, to the wall. It's a nightmare. And then if a child has a learning disability on top of that, whew. So through that, I found an ESA, a special needs ESA, an education scholarship account that would help us cover private school tuition. So we pulled him out of that great public school that wasn't meeting his needs, put him in a small private school that allowed me, the mother, the expert on my child, to go in and service him during the school day. And then, God has a journey for us. And I tell people all the time, I should probably play the lottery more than I do. Because he gave me not one, not two, but 3 dyslexic children. Yes, God bless America. It came from their daddy. It didn't come from me. So, an ESA allowed us to exercise and access education freedom. For me to customize my children's education according to their unique needs. Fast forward to today, 10 years later, we live in another part of the state where we have some amazing private schools, some amazing public schools, and guess what? Don't clutch your pearls. My children are in a public school. Because in this season, that is where they are best served. And because I was able to access education freedom, because I customized their education according to their needs, they are AP honor roll. That wouldn't have been a dream 10 years ago if we did not access the ESA. Now we are struggling in Algebra 2, because that's a nightmare. But my kids are doing great. They're so successful. And that is why Mississippi Ready was born. Born out of necessity for families because there wasn't a true voice for parents to help navigate the education system. As an educator, we like to use a lot of fancy words and jargon. And it can be intimidating for a lot of families. So Mississippi Ready, we educate families on what choices we have in Mississippi, how to navigate the space of education, and what those options should look like for the future. So I do have an ask of you, okay? I told some of you you're going to have a homework assignment. On your table, there's a little card. I think I put 2 to 3 cards on each table. It's a blue card that says Mississippi Ready. I'm going to ask you to take a second. Take your cell phone out and scan that QR code on the first one that's got that internet symbol. It'll take you to our website, MississippiReady.org, and take action. Y'all, it literally takes 10 seconds. Help us amplify our parent voices. Let our lawmakers know we have to have education freedom. It is life-changing. It has changed my family's life. And then while you're at it, if you're on social media, which I'm pretty sure we all are because that's how we get our information these days. So whatever your flavor is, I'm going to meet you where you are because we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on X. So please follow us because we give parents information that they need in digestible nuggets, bringing policy to people. Because at the end of the day, that's who it's affecting, people, families. So thank you all for being here today, and thank you for amplifying our voice.
Good afternoon. I'm Lindsey Beckham, and I'm with a little organization called Moms for Liberty. Now, Corey, you know all about Moms for Liberty. Now, at Moms for Liberty, we are dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend their parental rights at all levels of government. We know that it is the parents' fundamental right to direct the upbringing of their children as they see fit, not the government. We don't co-parent with the government, and our rights do not stop at the classroom door. We know that every child is unique and individual and different, and they all have different needs. We want to fund students, not systems, not superintendents, students. We believe that money should follow the child and help educate them in the best environment for them to learn, the best environment for their unique and special and individual needs. Now, you may have heard about a little bill around here called HB2, or the Education Freedom Act. So much misinformation, guys, so much misinformation out there, but one of my favorites, one of the favorite lines that I hate to hear is that we already have school choice in Mississippi. You can decide where your child goes. There's zones for a public school. If you don't like it, you can move to a private school. Let me tell you a little bit about my story. In 2016, I very unexpectedly lost my husband, pregnant with twins at the time, 2 young girls in kindergarten and 2nd grade. Now, my son, my baby boy, who was born exactly 2 months later, was born with a ventricular septal defect between the bottom 2 chambers of his heart, a hole in his heart. It required open heart surgery. We put him on a delayed vaccine schedule, and then we gave him all these vaccines in one visit. Very shortly after that, we got an autism diagnosis. Now, for a single mom, raising 4 children on her own, working several jobs, trying to make ends meet, it is not just that easy to get up and move to a different location, to a different school district that best meets the needs of my child. That's not possible for everyone in this state. So as much as we want to believe the lies that, yeah, we already have school choice right here in Mississippi, we don't. And it's not just children with special needs. There are children who are bullied. There are children who have not been able to get the classes that are best suited for them because their schools don't offer it. And they can excel in a different environment. And who are we to stop them from being able to do that? We see so many areas of government where public funds go to things that are not limited in our options. Parks, libraries, we get to choose which library we go to. We get to choose which park we take our kids to play in. Those are public dollars, but we still have choice. And I believe that all parents know their children better than any government system ever could. And who wants better for their child than their own parent? We need more choice right here in Mississippi, and I believe that we can make it happen. In fact, I know that we will make it happen because there's moms out there like Leah and I who aren't going to stop until we do. Thank you guys so much.
Thank y'all so much for having me. My name is Stone Clanton. I am the Director of Grassroots Operations for the Mississippi Chapter of Americans for Prosperity. I know our State Director, Charlotte Brown, was advertised. She unexpectedly had a death in the family, so she needed to go be with them, but she does send her regards. Y'all getting kind of the off-brand version of Charlotte, so it'll be okay. But as many of y'all know, HB2, what Lindsey was just talking about, was a fairly large bill, an omnibus bill, sometimes people speak of, that catered to a lot of needs in our education system. And two key components that we were so excited about were the education savings accounts, also known as ESAs in the bill. They were known as Magnolia Scholarship Accounts, MSAs. And then the public-to-public transfer portion of it, sometimes known as portability, open enrollment, and things of that nature. And those are things that our surrounding states, like Douglas was talking about, they're already working on, plus states that don't border us, that border our bordering states. And I believe this past, was it Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday that Texas opened up their, yeah, it was Tuesday, yeah, or Thursday. And I want to say there were 42,000 students.
Now 75.
75 now that have applied for this. So if that isn't encouraging in this fight, no matter where we're at in the battle for it right now, that should be encouraging to all of us. Now, I know that HB2, that was something that the House was very deliberate about. Back in the summer and into early fall, they hosted a number of hearings with their Select Committee on Education Freedom that allowed people to testify both in favor of it and opposed to it, from experts to parents, you name it. They were there, and I was there with our activists all across the state. Unfortunately, on February 3rd, the Senate Education Committee killed it via a voice vote, and I know that a lot of people thought that's it for education freedom in Mississippi right now. And I won't lie, it was a gut punch to me. I was sitting in the room when they voted for it. But I can go ahead and tell you the fight's not over. The fight's not over this session even. So where do we go from here? That's kind of where we're at right now. Well, the first week of session, the Senate Education Committee did pass some good bills out of their committee, but to be honest with you, they were all pretty weak in application, and they were all void of an ESA. So with those coming over to the House, we can always debate these, we can amend them, whatnot, and send them back over to the Senate to debate, because that's a big part of the legislative process is debate. And what I really hope is the Senate doesn't just blatantly and blindly oppose an ESA just for the heck of it. We can also go to conference committees and things of that nature, or the governor can call a special session, and we'll see if that happens or not. But irregardless of the vehicle, I think what matters is that school choice and conservative policy is not dead in 2026. It's just not. If we stay vigilant to our communications to the House and Senate members, if we support parents to get their message out for parental rights, if we understand and call out the fact that opposition is often putting out false truths, I'll just word it like that, we can empower parents to get this done. And I think this is what Starla, I think, really wanted to get across to y'all today. And this isn't about a bureaucratic system. This is not about them getting their taxpayer money through protectionism. It's not about fear-mongering from a progressive union. It's not about elected officials that are influenced by either. This is about families and giving them opportunities to let their unique individual children get the best learning experience possible. There was a quote here, or a saying that you wanted to say. It's fear can either be face everything and run, or face everything and rise. And we're just going to ask y'all to rise with us. This is very important. We're a grassroots organization, and I'm going to ask y'all to get in contact with y'all's elected officials and tell them that y'all want to see Mississippi students succeed through education freedom. Thank y'all so much.
In the past 5 years alone, we've had more advancement on the issue than the preceding 5 decades. So we've had 17 states pass universal school choice since 2020. Since conservative parents in particular woke up, they saw the woke nonsense through Zoom school, through remote learning, which we should have just called it remotely learning. There wasn't a lot of learning going on. But families saw the curriculum wasn't aligned with their values in too many places. It was either the social justice activism in the schools, you had far-left indoctrination, you had critical race theory, divisive ideology that was pitting students against each other as oppressors and the oppressed. You had gender ideology in too many schools. And so families stood up and said, you know what, maybe we'll go fight at the school boards because we were told that we had democratic accountability in the public school system. They saw that was a farce. It was a total facade. Because when they showed up to protest, guess what happened? They had their mics cut off. They were called domestic terrorists. Under the Biden administration, you had actually a letter going to the Biden administration asking parents to be investigated under the Patriot Act, of all things, as quote-unquote domestic terrorists. And that actually backfired on them. It was bold strategy, Cotton. It didn't work out for them. 26 states left the School Boards Association after that. And look, President Trump made it into the White House, not by accident, not by campaigning for the status quo. He wasn't saying, let's strengthen the Department of Education. He said, let's get rid of the Department of Education. We should have never had one. It should have never been created. It was a political payoff by Jimmy Carter to the teachers union since its inception. It's only thrown more money at the problem. They've spent about $3 trillion since 1979 when it was created. But that wasn't the only education platform that Donald Trump ran on. He also ran on, you guessed it, universal school choice. And guess what happened? He won the parent popular vote 9 points nationally. It's a big deal. And you fast forward to today, you've had so many red states. This is on the Republican Party platform passing school choice, including my home state of Texas. And the previous speaker just pointed out that in the first day alone, 45,000 families applied for the program. It's a pretty big deal. You might, let's say, I've seen these polls showing that there's support for school choice. What better way than to know that when families get the opportunity, they take it whenever they can. You see this in even blue states and blue cities like New York City, where they have a socialist mayor, Mamdani, probably because of the school system, but they have tens of thousands of kids on wait lists begging to get a better opportunity. Even Democrat constituents are using school choice and benefiting from it. And in some states like Florida, some of the Democrats have started to figure out maybe we should vote for this too. In their House in 2023, 10% of their House Democrats in Florida voted for it. That's not very many because they went from a purple state in 2018. DeSantis barely won. It was actually by 0.3 points in 2018. And the headline in the Wall Street Journal the next day had to do with school choice. The title was, School Choice Moms Tipped the Governor's Race for DeSantis. You wouldn't know it because you fast forward to 2022, he won by 20 points. He even won Miami by 7 points, a big city. And they were looking at exit polling. They were looking at how the election went. His opponent was named Andrew Gillum, a Democrat. He called to get rid of the 100,000 scholarships that were already working effectively for families in Florida, which were disproportionately low-income families, non-white families. And the CNN exit polling, of all places, found that black moms in particular came out in force for DeSantis about 3 to 4 times the anticipated rate, pulling him over the finish line. And the story is that those moms who were disproportionately using the school choice program basically became single-issue voters. This is one way for Republicans to make inroads with communities that historically have not voted with them on other issues. Those moms might have disagreed with DeSantis on every other policy, but they knew they wanted their kid to get a better opportunity. They didn't want their child to go to the same failing school district that failed them, that failed their parents, and their parents' parents, generation after generation after generation. They wanted their child to get out of that cycle of poverty. Mississippi has that same opportunity here. You saw this happen in West Virginia as well, another rural state. The census actually says West Virginia is one of the most rural states in the country. And when they were debating school choice back in 2019, ended up not getting across the finish line initially, but people were afraid that there was going to be a blue wave and that West Virginia, of all places, was going to go Democrat. Well, the teachers union started to threaten the Senate sponsor of the bill named Patricia Rucker. And while they revealed themselves to be paper tigers, they didn't take her out. And as Ralph Emerson said famously, that if you strike at a king, or queen in this case, you must kill him. They didn't kill the queen. And what ended up happening is that the Republicans saw that the status quo wasn't as powerful as they wanted you to believe, with all of their emails, superintendents telling their employees to protect their little fiefdoms. You fast forward to today, West Virginia has supermajorities of Republicans in both chambers. This is basically the only policy where Republicans can both do two things at the same time. basically give a benefit to their constituency and make inroads with additional constituencies while also decreasing government control at the same time. Why? Because we're already spending the tax money. We're just reallocating it from the system, as Lindsey said, to the student. We're going to fund the individual, not the institutions. And we do this with every other government-funded, taxpayer-funded program. Even in education, anybody heard of the Pell Grant for college? You have other college scholarships too. Do you have to take Pell Grants to a government-run college? No. You can take it to a religious university if you want. The decision is for the student to make, and the funding follows that decision that the student makes. Pre-K programs. You have Head Start here in Mississippi and all across the country. Do you have to take Head Start funding to a government pre-K that you're assigned to based on your address? No. You can take it to whatever decision is best for you. And that could even be a religiously affiliated pre-K if you want. It doesn't have to be, but that decision is not for the government to make. It's for the individual family to make. So when we're arguing for school choice, it's the same concept. The money should follow the child. The money doesn't belong to the schools, public or private. The money belongs to the kid. It belongs to the parents. They should be in the driver's seat. They know their children's educational needs far more than bureaucrats sitting in offices hundreds of miles away. There was some debate on the House floor. Jansen Owen did a great job defending the bill. But then one of the Democrats said something along the lines of, there's some of these parents that might not be able to choose. They're meth addicts and stuff like that. And first of all, that's a bad way to have a broad brush of saying that low-income parents wouldn't know what the heck to do. That's using outliers to dictate policy, which is never a good idea, which, by the way, if there's these problems in the household, that's not a school choice issue. The government should probably step in and have some accountability there, regardless of whether you're going to have school choice or not. But you can point to outliers in the school system today. There's abuse in the public school system. Does that mean we get rid of all public schools? No. You take care of business when you need to, but you don't take away 100% of choices for all families just because 0.1% of the families might not make the right choice. In general, they're going to make better decisions for their kids. And we've seen this movie before. This battle that's playing out in Mississippi happened in my home state. It happened in Iowa. The running joke in Iowa is that in 2022, the Democrats should have voted for Kim Reynolds, the governor. She was the president of the Republican Governors Association at the time. They should have voted for her pared-down version of school choice, which was only 3,000 students, because they ended up getting a full-blown version of school choice the next year. How did that happen? Well, it was similar to what happened in Texas and here. One chamber would pass the bill easily. Their Senate passed it with one Republican defection. It went over to the House, where Governor Kim Reynolds was a leader on the issue, much like Tate Reeves. She had individual meetings with legislators and said, what do we need to do to get this to my desk so I can sign it and expand education freedom in our state? The House wouldn't do it. They had so much chutzpah. They were drunk on power. They thought no one was going to hold them accountable. She engaged in the primaries, endorsed 9 opponents to incumbents and took them all out, got a new, more conservative House, and in the next year, a few months later, in January of 23, they passed a full-blown universal school choice program. And there we go. The cat's out of the bag now. There's no putting that genie back in the bottle, because when parents get school choice, they fight really hard to keep it. And they will reward the people who allow them to have those opportunities, like we saw in Florida, like we saw in West Virginia. You look over to Texas. Governor Abbott is a big supporter of school choice, but he took gloves off recently after they had a similar issue. Their Senate would always pass their school choice bill. It would go over to the House, and same thing. It actually went up for a vote in 2023 or so, and 21 Republicans voted with all the Democrats to kill their own party platform issue of school choice in the Texas House. After the elections happened, now 14 of those guys are gone. 14 of them are gone. And then in 2025, they passed universal school choice. But guess what Governor Abbott did? He had the opportunity to lead, and he took that opportunity. The very next State of the State address, which was in January of that year, he looked straight into the camera and said, I don't care how many special sessions it takes. I'm going to keep calling people back. Special session after special session after special session. And in Texas, you can't campaign if you're in special session. Meanwhile, the primary opponents are doing that. breathing down their necks. And so ultimately, those same guys who had been in office for decades, they thought they were untouchable too. They didn't learn a dang thing from Iowa. Another bold strategy didn't work out for them. And we ended up getting a better bill out of Texas, and now it just rolled out, and families won it. Same thing happened in Arizona, which, by the way, Arizona, when they passed their program, had 1-seat GOP majorities in both chambers. And the way it works in Arizona is that it's not the number of people present and voting that you have to have a majority. You have to have a chamber majority, which meant every single Republican had to show up. It would have been nice if the Democrats would have voted for it too, but every single Republican, given that the Democrats did not vote for it, they needed to be there, they needed to vote for it. They couldn't take a walk. I know there was some of that going on even on the House side here. They couldn't do that. And they voted for education freedom, made it happen, opened the floodgates. And in 2022, when they opened the website for applications, the government website shut down because so many people wanted it. Fast forward to today, over 100,000 kids are using scholarships in Arizona. Over 600,000 kids are using scholarships in Florida. It's untouchable now. I know it's almost a chicken and the egg program. You kind of have to pass it in order to get that constituency and coalition to fight to keep it. But once you do, families, as you can see everywhere else, they're going to want it. And you know what? It's also a win-win solution. Why? The public schools have gotten better in places like Florida. It's been a rising tide that lifts all boats. Florida was actually at the bottom of the pack on the nation's report card a couple decades ago. Since then, they've expanded school choice. There's been 10 out of 11 academic studies also showing better outcomes in the public schools in response to competition. There's 30 studies. Ed Choice is in the room as well. Nathan, great to see you. And they've put the studies together. No cherry picking. They just list all of them. That's why it's such a great resource. It's called the 1, 2, 3s of school choice. They list every study, positive or negative, and it is what it is. And 27 of those 30 studies find more competition from school choice, better outcomes in the public schools. You can't argue with that. The status quo's main argument is that it's going to hurt the public school system. Okay, if you're going to fearmonger about these things, point to where it's happened. It never has happened. And we've had 30 states now that have some form of school choice. I'll give you some good news that came out of President Trump's big, beautiful bill. It was the first congressional bill to ever pass a nationwide school choice program. How about that? It's called the Educational Choice for Children Act, and it's a federal tax credit scholarship. And if Mississippi can get something done at the state level, you can stack these scholarships on top of one another. The federal tax credit's only about $1,700 per person, or $3,400 that can be contributed in a dollar-for-dollar fashion per household for a married couple filing jointly. Well, if you can pass this $7,000 scholarship, you can get, $9,000, $10,000 if you stack them, and you could afford many more private schools than you otherwise would have been able to do, thanks to President Trump. But look, if Mississippi doesn't do the right thing and pass it through the legislature, it's not going to be as meaningful. It's great, it's a step in the right direction having a federal tax credit, and it's a very helpful move by the Trump administration, which, by the way, has anybody read the Wall Street Journal article this morning? President Trump, his White House actually endorsed House Bill 2. Not this morning, this was already out there. Linda McMahon, the education secretary, actually supported House Bill 2. And so we already know President Trump supports education freedom and universal school choice. And he was very helpful in the Texas primaries, I'll just say that, in endorsing the pro-school choice people, along with Ted Cruz and Governor Abbott. But Tate Reeves it's kind of all eyes on Mississippi right now. The Wall Street Journal is writing about it. I hear an editorial board pieces in the works writing about it. I wrote about it right when the Senate Education Committee quietly killed the bill. So it's circulating around the country. Heritage Foundation's Daily Signal wrote about it during School Choice Week as well. And so everybody's watching Mississippi because, it's another red state. It's kind of a head scratcher for a long time on the school choice issue, which Lindsey, pointed out one of their main arguments against school choice. Another one is that, because we're in a conservative area, they did this in Texas too. They figured we can't just keep using all the same lefty teachers union talking points. We got to come up with some conservative talking points to block it. So what can we do here? So in Texas, all the guys who were voting against it happened to live in rural areas. They were in the deepest red areas of the state, but when you ranked them for ideology based on their votes, they tended to be the more liberal members, which was kind of a conundrum. It was counterintuitive. But the argument then became, these were the guys that were already endorsed by the NEA, the state level affiliate of the teachers union, which the NEA, Becky Pringle is their president. Have you kind of seen them in the news lately? She's the lady that goes and screams about how we have to say the words, DEI, we need it in the schools. They're organizing all these anti-ICE protests all across the country. Well, I found out recently that she is an at-large member of the DNC, of the Democratic National Committee. And if you look at the follow the money, 99% of their political contributions from that union go to Democrats every election cycle. It's a money laundering operation. It's totally insane. And to me, if you're a state that you're a representative, it's an easy choice, or at least it should be. Do you side with President Trump, Governor Tate Reeves, and parents all across the state, or do you side with the Southern Poverty Law Center, Kamala Harris, and Joe Biden? I mean, this is an easy choice. And it's the idea of competition and free markets. We do this with every other industry. It works in education too. And this isn't something that is pie in the sky. Mississippi has a couple of school choice programs already, but they're very limited. They're special needs tax credit scholarships, which are great steps in the right direction, but we shouldn't be picking winners and losers anymore. It's great for the students with special needs, but even then, some kids are on wait lists, and look, everybody is guaranteed a funded education in Mississippi, which it's part of the Constitution to have a public education. Well, the unions tried to stop the school choice program in Idaho because of this constitutional language, the same language that you have in Mississippi. And they'll say, look, in Mississippi it says that we don't have to have school choice, these other states have it, but we don't have to have it because our Constitution says that you have to have a public school system. Hate to break it to you, but you're not special. Every single state in the union has an education clause in their Constitution saying you have to have a public school system. But guess what? 30 states have some form of private school choice. It hasn't been a barrier there. Why? Because as the Idaho Supreme Court Justice said, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can have a public school system in addition to giving choices to families. If it was a bill to repeal and totally abolish all the public schools, you might have an argument. But it's not. It strengthens the public schools through competition, and it also continues funding the public schools in addition to allowing families to take some of that money elsewhere. I mentioned on Super Talk just a little bit ago. Thanks for taking me over there, Douglas. And thank you, Mississippi Center for Public Policy, for inviting me out today. This is a fantastic luncheon, isn't it? And thank you, everybody, for coming out. But the requirement to provide A and B in the Constitution doesn't preclude you from doing C and D. You think about the military in America. Our Constitution says we have to have what? An Army and a Navy. It doesn't say we have to have an Air Force and a Space Force, yet here we are. So it wasn't a limiting factor there. It's not a limiting factor in Mississippi or any other state, and it wasn't a limiting factor in Idaho, where their Supreme Court just ruled unanimously that school choice passed constitutional muster in their state, as it does here. And look, you guys already have programs that are up and running and working, yes, through a tax credit, but it's the same kind of idea where the money can follow the child. And as I pointed out on the Super Talk show earlier, Mississippi public schools spend, like $14,000 a kid or so, maybe more this year. Things go up over time. And the scholarship's half that amount. So if you think about it mathematically, any engineers in the room? Yeah, me either. Some people call me doctor, but I can't really call myself doctor anymore. I'm more like a Joe Biden doctor. I have a PhD in education policy. Maybe I can't help you with the math stuff or the engineering, but if I get this right, and I'm pretty sure I got it right, if you're spending $14,000 a kid in the public schools and a kid leaves and they're taking $7, just the state portion, you get to keep all the local funding, you get to keep all the federal funding. What does that mean per student? Per student, your funding levels go up. They're higher than they were before. Let me put it to you this way. Just imagine if you're shopping at Walmart and you said, I don't like Walmart produce, whatever it is, I want to go somewhere else and shop somewhere else. Which, by the way, Walmart accepts SNAP and food stamps With those programs, do you have to get government cheese from a government-run hospital? No, unless you're in New York City with Ma'am Donnie and they're trying to have the government run the grocery stores too. It's a horrible idea. But in everywhere we live in America, when you have these taxpayer-funded initiatives, you can pick your grocery provider. You can pick your hospital with Medicaid vouchers. You can pick, as Lindsey mentioned earlier, everything else we do, we have choice in life. Every other level of education, we have choice, except for when it threatens and entrenched special interest. The superintendents protecting their fiefdoms, where they don't want anybody to be able to take even a fraction of the funding somewhere else. But if you were to leave Walmart and they were able to keep half of your groceries, let's say you're spending $200, $300, $400 a week on groceries, and they get to keep $200 a week even after you start shopping somewhere else. That would be a good deal for Walmart, right? Because they get to keep your money and they wouldn't have to give you the product. I'd say this is a fantastic deal for the public schools, that they get to keep any money at all, thousands of dollars for students who are no longer educating. You might say, oh, they got to keep the lights on, they got the buildings to maintain. Walmart does too. They have buildings and lights last time I checked, but all costs are variable in the long run. Only in the short run are costs fixed. But all that aside, this is a good deal for the public schools, a good deal for parents that get a choice, more of a say in their kids' education. And the teachers are getting the short end of the stick, not because of school choice, but it's because of the status quo. It's a monopoly. It has no incentive to spend money wisely. Why do you think teachers, despite getting more and more money at the top every single year, why are the teachers digging into their pocket every single year for supplies for their kids? Yes, because they care about the kids in the school system, but the school system doesn't care about them. We should give the school system a reason to focus on the needs of the teachers, and I think competition is the way to do that. There's 5 studies on this topic. I've done one of them, and I wrote about it at the Washington Examiner. Back in 2018, I wrote about this, and each study on the topic finds more school choice competition, higher teacher salaries in the public schools. Seems counterintuitive, but if you have an incentive to put the money towards the classroom and not towards administrative bloat, the teachers are going to get more of the money. They're going to see it, as opposed to it going towards hiring more people, which creates a bigger voting block for the people at the top. Salaries going towards superintendents making more than the President of the United States. And they start to prioritize where the money goes. And so real quick, before we open it up to questions, where do we go from here? I think special session after special session after special session is the way to go. We've seen the playbook work. I call it the Abbott-Reynolds playbook. It's happened before. It's worked before. This problem is not unique to Mississippi. We've seen it in other states. It's a politically charged topic. It shouldn't be. It should be bipartisan. It should be nonpartisan. If you look at polling, you have supermajority support across party lines, Republican, Democrat, Independent. And at the end of the day, even though the status quo will screech and kick and scream every step of the way, once that bill passes, they usually pivot and focus on something else. And then at the same time, you create this new constituency of people who don't want their scholarships ripped out of their hands, who want their kids to get a better life, a better opportunity than they had when they were kids. And so there's some, yes, special session, maybe we can amend existing bills. The session isn't over yet. Tate Reeves can call specials even within sessions, I've heard the word on the street. And this would force the Senate to talk about these things. I mean, Senate leadership supports school choice. Delbert Hosemann sent his own kids to private school, and I'm not blaming him for that. Everybody should seek out the best education for their kids. That's not a knock on him choosing school choice in the private form for his kids. Bless him for that. But he shouldn't pull up the ladder from behind himself and tell other families that they can't have the same kind of opportunities that he has. Senator Blount. If I'm picking on one of the Republicans, I got to call out one of the Democrats. He was on Twitter. I know a lot of people aren't on Twitter in this room. I am, too much. I will tell you, if you're on X, you won't need coffee anymore because it gets you riled up right in the morning. Bad for your mental health. I wouldn't recommend it. But you can cut out coffee, so there's wins and losses, there's trade-offs. But Senator Blount, after they killed the bill, he bragged about the Senate Education Committee killing it. And I said, aha, That's nice coming from you. You sent your own kids to private school. I think St. Andrews, the most expensive private school in the area. Sounds like school choice for me, but not for thee. I tweeted back at him with a quote tweet. I said, how dare you? You fought to kill school choice after you sent your own kids to private school. You absolute hypocrite. Those were the words. He didn't respond to it. But some other people did jump in on X, and it's just, look, I mean, this is the argument that, to bring it full circle, that Lindsey brought up earlier, where people say, we already have school choice. Yeah, easy for you to say when you're rich enough to be able to pay twice, to pay for the public schools that you're not using through the property tax system, and to pay again out of pocket. Or it's easy for you to say when you already live in the neighborhood that goes to these so-called public schools that are gated off, that you can't get to if you live on the wrong side of the arbitrary line that's drawn by the government. That's not equality of opportunity. That's not public in any meaningful sense of the word. Those are private institutions that discriminate on the basis of zip code. We should not lock kids into failure factories any longer. We should expand opportunities. And guess what? Obama said it best. If you like your public school, you can keep your public school. He was talking about doctors. But unlike your doctor, you can actually keep your public school when it comes to school choice. And we've seen all across the country, not a single public school has closed because of school choice, anywhere. We've had school choice for decades. And this rural argument, guess where the oldest voucher program started in America? Before Milton Friedman was even talking about it, way before. Over 150 years ago, in Maine and Vermont, they were called town tuitioning programs. And guess what it was built for? Specifically for kids in areas that were so desolate and rural, they didn't even have public schools. So what did the state figure out? Over 150 years ago, in their infinite wisdom, they said not having a lot of opportunities is an argument to expand them, not to restrict them. So they gave scholarships to the kids directly, to the parents to decide, and they could go to public schools in other nearby areas, or they could use the funding to go to private schools, even religious schools. Those laws are still on the books, even in Maine and Vermont, which are controlled by Democrats right now. But those programs are working for families, and they still haven't gotten rid of those programs. They've been there for over 150 years. But it shouldn't just be if you're in an area that doesn't have a public school. That is just to point out that if you're in a rural area, that's an even stronger argument to have choice. And supply meets demand. You put money in the hands of parents, supply will meet demand. You'll have more schools popping up. With ESAs, you can use them for micro schools. During COVID, people were calling them pandemic pods. Some people like to think of the homeschool co-op kind of thing. You can have a one-room schoolhouse, which has lower startup costs than a big, massive private school that you may not be able to start up right away in a rural area. But I'll end with this. In Florida, we have data from Step Up for Students over decades. That's their scholarship granting organization. In the most rural counties in Florida, the number of private schools has doubled over the last decade as they've expanded school choice. When you build it, they will come. And so this has worked everywhere it's been tried. The Trump administration is very supportive of school choice. President Trump made it his main education priority. And not a lot of people remember this, but guess he beat Kamala Harris on immigration, crime, basically, the economy, all the big ticket items. But one poll asked voters right before Election Day, who did they support more on education? Now, if you didn't really know what was going on in the last few years, you might say the Democrats probably typically have dominated on education for decades. If you look at polls over the last couple of decades, Democrats have won on education. Trump beat Kamala Harris, not on immigration, crime, and economy and other issues. He also beat her on education, according to Atlas Intel, the most accurate pollster the last presidential election, and was the most accurate this time as well. So this is a political winner. More importantly, it's the right thing to do. And the fight is not over yet in Mississippi. It's only just begun. And I'll be meeting with Governor Reeves right after this. And I think you know what my recommendation will be. Douglas, thanks again for having me. He didn't tell me to thank him, but he said, I've been talking so much, we have time for 2 questions. So that's it.
Okay, so my question is, you talked about the increase in public schools in Florida since all of that passed. Will you talk to us about the types of families and children that are attending those additional private schools?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the state, but like in Texas, for example, you look at the applications, it's been 75% of the applications so far out of those 75,000, which they're going to hit their cap. I mean, they're capped at 90,000 kids, and, you know, they're open until March 17th, these applications. So in a few days, they've gone to 0 to 75,000. They're going to hit 90,000 easy. And it's one of these things where, you know, that there was a cap in this bill as well, but I'm not too worried about caps because once you have a wait list, that creates additional pressure to clear the wait list. This happened in North Carolina too, which, by the way, each chamber had 60% Republicans in North Carolina when they passed their bill, but they had a Democrat governor, Roy Cooper, who sent his own kid to private school too and then fought against it for others. It's a recurring theme now, isn't it? Stacey Davis Gates in Chicago, she called school choice racist a couple of years ago, and then we found out last year she sent her kid to a private school too. I don't know if she was telling on herself or what it was, but each Republican voted, you needed 60% to override a veto in North Carolina. Every single person voted for school choice on the Republican side to override that veto in North Carolina. So it can be done. Coalitions can form. You can lock arms and do the right thing. It's possible. But the people using school choice in Texas, out of those applications, I believe the latest stat that I heard was 75% of them were low-income families. In D.C., they have a voucher program that's still on the books. It had to be passed by Congress because it's a federal district. It's for low-income families, and the average income of that program, from what I remember, it's only like 3,000 families or something. There's always like thousands of families on the wait list every year because they should, that's another thing Congress should do since it's a federal district, get rid of the wait list. But they have the average household income in DC using that program is like 30 to 40,000, and there are 95% of the kids are non-white, Black or Hispanic. So that's kind of the statistics. I saw a study that came out of Journal of School Choice. I just saw it was a peer reviewer. Don't tell anybody. It's supposed to be double blind. But I think I'm going to accept that study. It's a good one. But they found that they looked at the county by county voting record of whether you voted for Trump or Kamala in the last election, and the people using the school choice program were disproportionately from the Democrat-controlled areas. Maybe because they have the worst public schools in those areas. Maybe because there's more private options in those areas in the short run. There's a couple reasons for why that could be, but it could be that it could very well be that maybe in the rural areas the public schools are more supported by the communities and maybe they better reflect the community's values. But at the end of the day, you should still support schools choice for people in other areas because this is about the future of our country. If you had kids stuck in these schools with 0% proficiency rates in some cases, where they're spending tons of tax dollars and these kids are illiterate and they're graduating, that's ultimately going to lead to more government dependency in the future. It's going to lead towards, I would say, more socialism in the future. I think we're going to have more Zohran Mamdanis if we're not careful. And I think the education system is how you strike at the root of that problem to save our country. No one wants to be last.
I'll be last.
All right.
Corey, you may remember back in August, we tricked the Mississippi Democratic Party to admit on X.
And then they blocked me.
And then they blocked you. Yeah, you're welcome. I wish they would block all of us.
They had AI write that tweet, by the way. I have a knack for knowing when AI writes.
Well, I would tell you that Democratic National Committee gave our state Democratic Party about $300,000 just for communications last year.
Wow,
And so I think it was an intern who was making a lot of money for them.
that's crazy.
But they admitted that Pell Grants go to private individuals. They admit that we should empower individuals.
Not
it was
institutions.
beautiful.
Yeah.
My question is,
Talk about a cell phone.
you mentioned the black moms supporting DeSantis. You mentioned the black and Democratic legislators in Florida supporting DeSantis. My question is, how do we convince our Democratic colleagues in Mississippi that this is good? As you mentioned, this is going to disproportionately affect positively
I think they understand.
those constituents?
Yeah, on that Democratic Party thing, yeah, they immediately blocked me. They deleted the tweet after massive pushback. Douglas was chiming in as well. Tate Reeves put a tweet out afterwards, and guess what he said? I guess I should call a special session since it's on the Republican Party platform, and all the Democrats apparently support school choice too. What they did was they inadvertently made an argument for school choice, and it was so obvious to everybody watching. What they did was they had AI write the tweet, and you can tell this with the M dash when there's language like it's not just this but that. Like you can tell when something is written by AI, and all their press releases during that time were written by AI too. It's very easy to figure it out if you've used AI enough. And so AI scours the internet to look for arguments about a particular topic. Grok in particular looks at Twitter to see the arguments around school choice. They picked up yours truly's arguments. Because my main argument for years has been students, not systems, individuals, not institutions. And so they put this tweet out saying that, we should fund students, not systems. And it's like, yeah, of course, that's what we've been arguing. And that's why they had to delete it. But Tate Reeves said, if this is the case and you guys actually support school choice, I should call a special session. Yeah, you actually should. And for real this time. It's time to do it and to follow through. And Tate Reeves did put out another very scathing tweet that was very critical of the Senate killing the school choice bill. He said, it was a very long tweet, but the money quote was that in his 27 years of politics, he's never been more disappointed or ashamed of someone in politics, and he was pointing towards Delbert Hosemann for killing the school choice bill in the Senate. So,
how do we convince Democrats?
So to bring it full circle, to get back to the real question is, I don't think it's a matter of the right arguments. They know the arguments around the school choice debate. At the end of the day, they're only going to do it when they feel compelled to do that, when they're more afraid of the kids' union, the parents, than the teachers' union. And so the only way that's ever going to happen, and I wrote about this in my book, The Parent Revolution, which is endorsed by President Trump and Pete Hegseth and many others. You can get it on Amazon, low price. It's 40% off right now. It's called The Parent Revolution. But the only way that's ever going to happen, I write about in chapter 4, called The Red State Strategy, is that when Republicans pick up the football and lead on the issue, that's when Democrats start to say, oh crap, we're going to bleed votes on the issue. We better come along too. That's how it was in Florida. Democrats didn't initially vote for the bill. They voted for the universal version, which was the best version, but that was in 2023. And Florida's been doing this for decades, right? And so in Louisiana, which is another example I should have pointed out, it's more relevant to you guys, that it's more recent too. In 2023, they passed the universal ESA in Louisiana. One of the main proponents was a Democrat on the House floor arguing the bill. Jason, I forget his last name, but he went viral. And he was like, I'm done with this. I'm not playing politics with kids' lives anymore. And it was an epic speech, and 20% of their House Democrats voted for it. Yeah, that's only 6 people in Louisiana. I get it, but on a percentage-wise, that is a big deal. A fifth of the chamber of Democrat caucus voted for the bill. And not just a teeny tiny school choice bill that was for a few kids. It was for everybody. It was universal. It was Milton Friedman's vision, and you had Democrats voting for it. So you can build bipartisan coalitions. And I don't want to be political, but politicians are looking at cost and benefits. They want to be reelected. And to be honest, a lot of the Democrats I've heard privately, I'm with you, I want to vote for it, I'm just afraid I'm going to get primary. Because while it's on the Republican primary ballot to support party platform to support school choice, you have the opposite problem on the Democrat side. In many of their platforms, it's to be against school choice. So if they stick their neck out, they get, this happened in Georgia where Misha Maynard voted for it, and you had people in the caucus putting blank checks on Twitter saying, whoever's going to run against her, I'm putting this check out to you. Misha Maynard actually had to switch parties to the GOP after that on the issue of school choice. Tricia Coffin did the same thing in North Carolina. She was a Democrat, then became the primary sponsor of the universal school choice bill. And they redrew the lines, and she's still in office. So that worked out for her.
Corey, thank you so much.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Meena, and today I want to talk about doing hard things. I want to start with someone who, in my opinion, has done hard things in Mississippi in a way that most people will never fully see, but we all benefit from, and that's Douglas Carswell and the Mississippi Center for Public Policy. I genuinely believe Mississippi can be a top state in the country because of leaders like Douglas and institutions like this. People who don't just complain, but do the hard work of building a blueprint, pushing for reforms, and staying relentless. Back in December, I messaged Douglas with something that had been on my mind for a long time. I asked, how do we become a top state in the country? What are the best states actually doing, like Florida and Texas? And how do we emulate what works? Because I'm tired of watching my friends and good people leave Mississippi to chase opportunities somewhere else. Douglas didn't just nod and say, yeah, that's a problem. He did what serious leaders do. He went to work and came out of that was the Mississippi Momentum document that you'll have underneath your chairs. A plan that doesn't just celebrate progress, but calls out the gaps we still have to fill if we want to lead. Not in 10 years, not in someday, but with the kind of discipline, step-by-step execution that winning states actually do. So now I want to talk about about hard things on a personal level and someone who's impacted me personally, and that's Phil Sowen. Phil has been in a wheelchair bound since the age of 4, and instead of letting that define what he can't do, he built a life around what he's called to do. He has a beautiful wife, Emily, and 2 daughters, Anastasia and Samantha, who he's incredibly proud of. I got to know Phil because on some weekends he travels and preaches the good news of Jesus Christ and what he's done on the cross for us in churches all across Mississippi. One weekend he asked me, would you take me to Greenville to preach? So we went, and I watched him deliver a sermon that left me in awe. Not because it was flashy, but because you could feel the strength behind it. He's a man who has every reason to slow down, every excuse to sit it out, but he refuses. He gets up and he goes, and he shows up and does the hard thing. On the way home, we were talking about life and faith and leadership and even politics. And he told me his daughters, Anastasia and Samantha, had started the Turning Point USA chapter in Jackson after Charlie Kirk's assassination. So what hit me was this. She didn't just have an opinion. She didn't just repost something. She didn't just say somebody should do something. They took an idea and they turned it into action. And in a world where it's easy to talk, it's easy to criticize, easy to point fingers, action is hard. Starting something is hard, and leading is hard, and being the person who raises their hand and says, I'll go first is hard. And that is doing hard things. So after recognizing Douglas, who's doing the hard work of building a blueprint for Mississippi's future, and Phil, who's living proof that hard things don't get the final word, I want to introduce someone who represents the same spirit. Anastasia Sowen, the head of Turning Point USA Jackson, can't be here today. She's home with pneumonia. So before we move on, let's keep Anastasia in our prayers for a full and quick recovery. However, her younger sister, Samantha, is here and will be speaking on behalf of Turning Point USA Jackson. But first, we're going to roll a short video to introduce Anastasia and the work she's leading. And Douglas and the entire Sowen family are living proof of what it takes when people stop talking and start leading. Let's watch the video.
My name is Anastasia Sowen. I'm 16 years old. I'm currently homeschooled in Jackson, Mississippi. I'd ideally like to go to Mississippi State University and study chemistry, and then either go on to get my medical degree in anesthesiology or become a nurse anesthetist. It's not the best use of our resources to spend $7,000 for school tuition for me and my sister. And so homeschooling is the most ideal situation for what we have. Since we moved here, I wanted to go to this school called St. Augustine. It's a great school. It's very rigorous from what I've heard from my friends. If we had real school choice in Mississippi it would help me and my sister go to the places we want and achieve more. Despite your socioeconomic background, you can go to a school that challenges you, that shapes you into a better person. So just a few weeks ago, I learned that kids can only go to their school based on their zip code. There are a lot of people who are in bad situations of life and they want to get out of them, but they're limited to the school that they have to go to. I feel like it's not fair. If there's a better opportunity available, school choice is not radical. We live with school choice every day, but instead of school, it's something else. You know, I had a choice of where to buy my clothing. I have a choice of where to buy my food. Another school would challenge me better, would help set me up for college and then college for the rest of my life. Or if the parents want to send their kids to a better school, they should have that choice. And it shouldn't be limited by the red tape invisible lines that they draw. I think of the phrase, if nothing changes, nothing changes.
All right, here's Samantha.
My sister Anastasia was supposed to be up here giving the speech, but unfortunately she's had pneumonia for several days and is still recovering. So today you get the understudy. My name is Samantha Sowen, and I'm the secretary for Club America Jackson. Club America is a high school organization powered by Turning Point USA, and I am honored to be here because the same values that guide Club America are the same values that guide Mississippi Center for Public Policy. Charlie Kirk believed that students don't have to wait until adulthood to matter. We believe at Club America that young people can lead in their schools, serve their communities, and take responsibility for the places that they call home right now. The Mississippi Center for Public Policy shares that same conviction, that the best solutions are local, that parents matter, that communities matter, and that education works best when it reflects the values and needs of the people it serves. Both Club America and Mississippi Center for Public Policy understand something important. Education isn't about preparing students for a future job someday. It's about preparing citizens, neighbors, leaders in their own communities. And when young people are trusted with that responsibility, we rise to it. So thank you for believing in education that empowers, in freedom rooted in community, and in students who are ready to contribute, not later, but now. What we do locally today shapes the Mississippi that we inherit tomorrow. And I am proud to be a part of the generation that's ready to help build it. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. How can you listen to Samantha? How can you listen to Anastasia and vote against school choice? How can you listen to Anastasia and dare to call yourself a conservative and vote against school choice? That, I think, is the most compelling moral argument for school choice that I've ever heard. It's not just about standards. It's not about NAEP scores. It's about the values that we heard there. So thank you. Thank you to your sister. We wish her a quick recovery, and thank you so much. I'm now going to be taking Corey to see the governor. I think the best thing we can aim for is a special session. And if the governor was to support a special session, I think it would be a clear choice. Are you on the side of the fat cat school superintendents who earn more money than the governor of the state? Or are you on the side of Anastasia and Samantha? Let's have that special session and let's make people make that choice.